Hello everyone, it's 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐸, and today I'll be listening to Signos, the 1986 album by Soda Stereo. Soda Stereo were an Argentine new wave and alternative rock group led by songwriter and singer Gustavo Cerati. And they made a huge impact across all of Latin America throughout the 80s and early 90s. Living in Mexico, it didn't take long for me to hear their music at parties and on the radio. I particularly enjoyed their hit single de música ligera, so I went and listened to the album it was from, 𝐾anción_animal, and I loved it. And my favorite song on that album probably ended up being �1 millón de años luz, but I haven't heard any of their other albums since then, so this is long overdue. I've decided to go for this album, Signos, next, which means signs, because it was a huge album for them. It includes the single Persiana americana, which of course I hear everywhere here in Mexico. It's a massively popular song, and I love it. It's always getting stuck in my head. It's just obscenely catchy. So now I'm quite excited to hear more of Soda Stereo at the peak of their new wave era in the 80s. So let's get into it. Do me a favor and click the like button and share this video with anyone you know that loves Soda Stereo. So let's get started with track 1. It's called Sin Sobresaltos. So that was a very high energy opening track for the album. The sound is of course very 80s, this coming out right in the middle, the peak of the 80s, 1986. But the production works very well for this music, especially with the heavily reverbed drums sounding massive. Sounds like music for an arena being played at an arena. But yeah, loads of energy in this one, very up-tempo, and I shouldn't expect any different from the album that includes Persiana americana. The bass was surprisingly up front in the mix though, and almost sounding grungy, which was quite unexpected. But of course the synths and even the vocal melody and vocal style are pure 80s new wave. The vocal melody itself didn't do too much for me, but I really enjoyed the guitar riffs, and the overall feel of the song is cool. Maybe I hear some influence from U2 in the guitar. And I'm also reminded of Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears, which came out just the year before. You know, in terms of the whole new wave goes massive kind of sound. So, pretty cool start. Let's move on to track 2. It's called El Rito.
Soy un profanador, desafiando al rito.
Okay, so for the most part of that song, it was more of a straight up pop song. The backing vocals in particular give that sound of the 80s. You know, this wouldn't have sounded out of place next to the pop hits of the time on the radio. It's really not so different to what, say, Madonna was doing at the time, you know, in terms of its sound. And, you know, for the record, I'm a huge fan of Madonna, so that's fine by me. There was a nice bit of organ in this one though, which sounded great and reminded me of what they would do later on 𝐾anción_animal. And there was a cool jam in the last minute or so of the song, which in a way is surprising for a pop song like this, for them to extend it out in that way, but I thought it worked pretty well. It almost gave the song a slightly psychedelic feel towards the end, which is pretty cool. Although there were some really nice drumming parts, especially some nice hi-hat work on this song, I did feel that the rhythm itself got a little bit repetitive. You know, it was a whole 6 minutes with basically the same tempo, the same beat going through the whole thing. I guess I just would have liked it to change up a little here and there, but on the whole I thought it worked. So on to track 3, it's called Prófugos. Well, that was pretty unexpected with how funky it was, how dancey. The keyboard sounds had me thinking of Stevie Wonder, or more of the time something Michael Jackson was doing. But of course they surrounded the funky parts with more of the new wave sound of this album. And we had a great vocal performance by Cerati, you know, very powerful, very emotional. And again, I'm reminded of Tears for Fears in that way, with the power and emotion, but also with the sounds of the pianos and the sound effects. I have to say the actual tune didn't do too much for me. There were some great parts in this song and some really exciting changes, but I don't think the actual melody is going to stick with me after this first listen. It might just take a few more listens to grow on me. But still, a lot of fun, very enjoyable. So let's move on to track 4. It's called No Existes.
No existes, no existes.
And that's the end of the first half. Back in the 80s, we'd be turning over the LP at this point. But yeah, I really like this song. The drum machine in the introduction was especially cool. It gave the song a slightly dark atmosphere, which appealed to me. But throughout the song, we had beautiful vocals, some really interesting parts in the melody, and again, so much emotion. And I actually loved the chorus in this one. Very memorable. The change up halfway through was fun, and I really liked the exciting ending to the song. But all in all, I definitely liked the more toned down and dark introduction the best. But yeah, that was probably my favorite song so far. I really liked it. Track 5 is the one I already know, and I'm sure you know it, Persiana Americana.
Soy un espía, es difícil de creer.
Well, there you are. What can I say? It's a perfect pop song. Every part of that song is catchy and memorable. It's like one huge chorus, you know, there's not just the one catchy part. It's just one whole hook. Super memorable, super exciting. I can imagine people must have just danced like crazy to this song at the time, you know, in concert, seeing Soda Stereo live, and also at the club. I mean, it's just the perfect song for partying to, basically. It just has that energy, pure joy. And I love it. I love the sound of it. I love the tune. I think it's so well written and so well produced. It's great. So let's move on to track 6. It's called En Camino. Okay, so at the start of that one, all I could think was, wow, this sounds just like U2. You know, with those quick strummed guitars and the huge drums behind it. I have to be honest, I'm not a huge U2 fan, but I do like some of their 80s stuff, and this sounded good to me. I especially liked the guitar riffs in this one. Once again, actually, I realized that's happened a couple times on the album so far, where the guitar part stands out most to me. It sounded at the start like they were going to go into more of a slow song, which I thought would have been a good idea after the crazy energy of the last song, Persiana Americana. And so in the intro of this song did work well in that way. But then once we got going into this song, it was another high tempo, huge energy track. And I did enjoy this one. But I do hope that on the last couple songs, maybe they've got something slightly different to offer. So let's find out. Track 7 is the title track, Signos.
Llámame pronto.
Brilliant. That was just great. That was exactly what I was hoping for. You know, something a bit more moody and atmospheric. The riff on the guitar with the delay on it, that's a signature Pink Floyd riff. You know, you can hear it on One of These Days and Run Like Hell, for example. And it fit perfectly here, especially along with the other memorable riffs that were going on the keyboard. And in the chorus, which was fantastic. We had a deep and catchy tune, as always, sung fantastically by Cerati. And we had yet another memorable guitar part in the chorus as well, along with some of that sweet organ to top it off. So that was brilliant. I'm very pleased with that song. And it leaves us with just the last track, track 8, and it's called Final Caja Negra. All right, a nice way to end the album. I wouldn't have minded hearing a bit more of that guitar solo that was fading out at the end there. But yeah, a decent last song. I wasn't in love with the song itself, but the instrumental parts were very cool, and I especially enjoyed the outro. Really good stuff. Overall, a really enjoyable album. Definitely of its time, with the sounds of the mid-80s on full display. But I'm not surprised at all that this album was so popular and that the singles were so successful. The band just seems to have so much energy on this album. It's just pouring out of them. And you know, albums like this, they don't exist anymore. They're something that's very much of the time, which displays a rock band that is obviously very proficient and know how to come up with cool ideas, but they're making pop music that's going to appeal to the masses. And you know, that's something I really am romantic about, I suppose. You know, a lot of the artists I've mentioned in this video so far, like pop artists like Madonna and groups like Tears for Fears, you know, especially Tears for Fears, I mean, their first couple albums are some of my favorites of all time. And I definitely think that this music is going for a similar approach. It's music with thought put into it and clearly a lot of passion put into it. And yet it's just so easy to enjoy and so catchy. You know, there were some points where I felt that the melodies could have been a bit stronger. Like I said, I don't know if some of them just need to grow on me a bit more. But even in the songs where I felt the melodies were slightly weaker, there was always something to pull me in, usually guitar licks. And pretty much all the songs had something interesting going on in terms of the structure as well. There were usually some pretty exciting changes. You know, there aren't any 2 or 3 minute simple pop tunes here, which again is quite emblematic of the time. Although maybe they were slightly ahead of the curve on that, because it would definitely become more of a thing in the late 80s, early 90s to, you know, extend out the pop song format. I mean, even Tears for Fears, who I keep mentioning, but their next album in 1989, The Seeds of Love, would have pop songs stretching up to 7-8 minutes long with all different parts and changes. And so, yeah, I guess I see some of that happening here with Soda Stereo. And I really enjoy that. I think that's a really exciting way to approach pop music. You know, it could be influenced by what the Beatles had done in the 60s. And, you know, obviously most pop and rock artists that followed them were influenced by the Beatles. But no doubt Soda Stereo are probably influenced by the music of Argentina that had come before them. You know, the stuff that Spinetta and Charly Garcia had been doing. And they also wrote, not necessarily pop, but often basic rock music, but they would extend it out and embellish it, give it influences from other places. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Cerati was influenced by that approach in his songwriting. So yeah, very cool album. Let me know what you think I should listen to next from Soda Stereo. If I should listen to more of the new wave pop stuff, or if I should move into their 90s stuff, which I know becomes a little bit more experimental in the rock side of things. And I'm very interested to hear both. I appreciate both approaches, so if it's good music, it's good music, and I want to hear it. So if you enjoyed the video, do please click the like button for me. And if you want to support me, you can use the link in the description to buy me a coffee. I'll really appreciate it. It honestly does help me to keep this channel going and keep making these videos. So thank you very much for watching. And until next time, take it easy.